Bon dia, welcome to Exploring Timor-Leste, the podcast that talks about Southeast Asia's best kept travel secret. I'm your host Jonty, and I'll share first-hand insights, expert interviews and practical travel tips. Whether you're a traveller, a culture lover or just curious about places rarely covered in the mainstream, you're in the right place. Let's explore Timor-Leste. Welcome to the Exploring Timor-Leste podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about snorkelling, diving and swimming with blue whales in Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste has some of the best snorkelling and diving in the world, and this is a major attraction for visitors to this country. One of the reasons for this is it sits in the Coral Triangle, and it's renowned for the diversity of the fish life and the health of the coral. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about where the best places are to go snorkeling and diving and swim with blue whales. One of the great things about snorkeling and diving in Timor-Leste is much of it is easily accessible from either walking in from a beach or taking a short boat ride. This is not the Great Barrier Reef where you might spend an hour going out on a boat to go to your dive site. Here, if you're spending more than 5 or 10 minutes on a boat, that would be quite unusual. And say a lot of the sites you can literally just go in off the beach and the reefs are meters away from the shore. The temperatures in the water are very warm, so somewhere between 27 to 29 degrees, which is between 81 and 84 Fahrenheit throughout the year. So it's very constant sea temperature, and it's warm enough when I've been snorkeling, even diving down to 15 or 20 meters. I haven't needed a wetsuit. The reefs are some of the most biodiverse in the world. Around Ataru Island, they've surveyed hundreds of different species of fish living above the reef. Dolphins are also quite commonly seen, and in Tasitolu in Dili, you can also see dugong. Visibility is best during the dry season, so that runs from around May to November. You can dive all year round, but the dry season is the best time for visibility, and generally sea conditions as well are going to be more favourable then. The best known dive companies in Timor-Leste are Dive Timor, Aquatica, Dreamers Dive, Compass Diving and Ataru Dive Resort. The first three of those are based in Dili, the last two are based on Ataru Island. They all offer PADI training courses. You'd expect to pay about $400 for the open water course and qualification, and around $50 to $60 for a standard dive, which would include gear hire and a dive master or instructor. All prices are in American dollars because that is the currency of Timor-Leste. You can also hire snorkeling gear for the dive companies, and some accommodation providers like Barry's Place on Ataru Island will also have gear that you can hire, but I would recommend that you actually bring your own from home, because a lot of the places, particularly for snorkeling, there are no facilities or access to hire gear, so it's best to bring your own snorkel and mask and fins if you can from home. The most popular place in Timor-Leste to snorkel and dive is Ataru Island. This lies just to the north of the capital city, Dili. You can reach it by ferry, which takes about 1.5 hours for the fast ferry or closer to 3 hours for the slower ferry. Or there are 15-minute flights from Dili into Ataru. The most popular places to snorkel and dive are at Beloy. This is where the ferry wharf is and close to where the airstrip is. And that's where the accommodation is. So that's pretty much where most people are going to be spending most of their time on Ataru Island. There are a number of accommodation providers like Barry's Place, Ataru Dive Resort and Compass who offer accommodation and the opportunity to organise snorkeling and diving. Beloy has a reef literally by the ferry wharf, which you can access via the beach, but the best snorkeling is the inner reef, which is about a 5-minute boat journey away. There you can expect to see a huge variety of fish life and coral life. There are some giant clams there, which are as good as the ones I've seen in Samoa, which are much better known. The reefs are very healthy. There is a lot of live, active, colourful coral. I've done a bit of snorkeling around the world, but I've met people who've done a lot of snorkeling and diving globally, and they really rate the snorkeling and diving at Ataru as some of the best that they have done. There are also excellent reefs on the west coast of Ataru Island at Adara and Atakru. A number of marine reserves have been established around the island, which aren't entirely popular with the locals given that they depend on fishing for their livelihood, but they are areas with reefs and they're protected from fishing, so that really encourages good fish life in those areas, and they also generate some income for the local communities. There's normally a $2 per person fee to enter those areas. So I said Beloise, the most popular and the easiest place to snorkel and dive. If you want to go to Atacru or Adara on the west coast, you'll either need to get a boat around the island, which takes about an hour, or if you're keen on hiking, you can hike across the island in 2 to 3 hours and just snorkel from the shore. You can stay, obviously, overnight, stay for as long as you want on Atacru Island, but using the fast ferry, you can go there for day trips on a Saturday. There is gear at Barry's Place if you want to hire and go for a snorkel or take your own gear. So you can do it as a day trip from Dili. Atacru Island's a nice place to stay, and so I'd recommend that you spend a few days to really explore the place and keep an eye out for the tides as well, because I reckon low to mid tide is my favourite time to go snorkeling. You're very close to the reef to see everything that's there, and also snorkeling first thing in the morning or later in the afternoon is quite kind of atmospheric compared to the middle of the day. There are 2 dive companies based on the island. There's Compass Diving and Atacru Dive Resort. Dive Timor are based in Dili, but they also run trips over to Atacru Island. Similar prices to before. Expect to pay about $60 for a dive, including dive equipment and a dive master or instructor. And it's generally just a short boat trip out to reach the sites. Note that between May and September there are quite strong trade winds, which can make the waters a bit choppy on the east coast. So the dry season is a good time to visit, but maybe later in the dry season if your focus is going to be diving and snorkeling. The winds do take the edge off the temperature, so it makes it quite pleasant when you're on shore, but it means the waters can be a little bit choppier. But the inner reef in particular in Beloise is very well sheltered, so even if the conditions are quite rough further out, the snorkeling there is usually possible. There is also excellent snorkeling in Dili, the capital city. The 3 most popular places to snorkel are Cristo Rey Beach, so that is just in front of Cristo Rey, the large statue of Jesus to the east of the city centre. There is Back Beach, which is behind the Cristo Rey statue, and that is a beautiful sandy beach and probably the best place for snorkeling in Dili. And there's also Tasitolu, which is out to the west of the city close to the airport. That is a little bit more variable depending on the conditions. The visibility can be a bit hit and miss, but there is a reef just offshore there, so there are quite a few opportunities to go snorkeling in Dili, and those sites are all free. There are very limited facilities though, so Cristo Rey Beach does have some toilets. The other 2 do not have any public toilets or changing areas. But if you head into the water for any of those 3 sites, within a few minutes you will be above the reef, and there are beautiful fish, coral, starfish. As I say, at Tasitolu, if you're lucky, you may see a dugong, which is quite an unusual creature to see. There is also a number of dive sites in Dili, so all 3 of those areas can be dived. Though probably Tasitolu is the most popular one because it's got quite a steep drop off to go to the deeper depths. As mentioned earlier, there are 3 dive companies based in Dili. There's Dive Timor, there's Aquatica and Dreamers Dive Academy, and they all have a regular schedule of trips that they run, including in Dili and also a little bit further afield. As well as at Uru and Dili, you can also go diving at a number of other sites around Timor-Leste. Now, one thing to note is there are quite a lot of crocodiles in Timor-Leste, so that means the south coast in particular is off limits because there are saltwater crocodiles which you don't want to see either on land and particularly in the water. But there are no crocodiles around Atacru Island, and there have been very few sightings in Dili or to the east and west. Kind of an hour either side is pretty safe. So if you head to the west, you can go to Mubara. There are some dive sites along the way between Dili and Mubara, and there is snorkeling there in Mubara and also at Likisa. And then heading to the east, a number of dive sites on the way out to Manatutu. Places like $1 Beach and K41. There's a number of different sites along there which access from the shore. So there's a shore dive, and those Dili-based dive companies will offer trips out there which include transport and then the diving and then transport back to Dili. There is also snorkeling at Jacko Island, which is at the very easternmost point of Timor-Leste. This is one of the 2 islands in Timor-Leste. You've got Jacko Island and Atacru Island. Jacko Island is uninhabited. It's got a very beautiful beach. There's basically nothing on the island. It's a sacred place where people are not allowed to camp, and there is some snorkeling and diving opportunities around there. I personally I think it's a bit risky just because there are crocodiles known to live in the area, and I have heard firsthand from people who have had some situations with crocodiles. So it is a reasonably popular place to snorkel. Again, you'll need to bring all your own equipment with you, but personally I would stick with the snorkeling and diving around Atauru and Dili as safer places to enter the water. Timor-Leste is one of only 10 countries in the world where you can swim with whales, and I believe it's probably the only country in which you can swim with blue whales, which are the largest species of whale. So this is quite an unusual thing that you can do, and something that's really only possible in Timor-Leste, and it is quite a draw card for people visiting around mid-October to the end of November. So there's about a 6-week window in which the blue whales migrate through the wettest strait, which runs between Dili and Atauru. So it is quite easy to access and have this experience. This is quite a draw card for visitors to Timor-Leste, so things can book out months in advance, which is very unlike anything else in Timor-Leste. But if you're interested in whale watching, this is something you do need to plan ahead for. Obviously, you are not guaranteed to see any whales. Like, you have a pretty good chance, but there's no guarantees when it comes to wildlife. If you don't see whales, you probably will see dolphins and some other things of interest, but you might get lucky and they might see a number of whales in a day, or you may not see any. So just to manage expectations. Now, the species of blue whale that go through are pygmy blue whales, which are the most common species of blue whale. And although pygmy may suggest they're small, they can grow up to 24 meters long, which is only 6 meters shorter than the longest blue whale species. So these are massive and impressive animals to see. The most common area to spot the whales is off the coast of Hira, just to the east of Dili, between Dili and Atauru Island. Now, the pattern of migration has changed with climate change, so typically they are coming later in the year. So I would suggest that if you're looking to do this, probably November is better than October, and actually even towards the end of November is the more likely time to see them. In terms of cost, this is probably one of the more expensive things you can do in Timor-Leste. Expect to pay around $250 for a half-day sightseeing trip, or $400 for a full day whale watching. And you have the opportunity of swimming with them. Again, that is not that common. A number of countries, they have different rules and regulations around engaging with animals. In Timor, you are able to get into the water and snorkel. You can't dive because they are migrating, so they're going at a reasonable pace. Basically, the boats will look to spot the whales when they come up to breathe, and then they will try and basically get into the path of the whale when it's looking to come up to breathe next, so that people can get out of the boat in their snorkel gear and hopefully get a good view of the whale as it goes by. If you have a drone, and there are really no drone rules in Timor-Leste, so it is a good place to bring your drone, then you can get some amazing footage from above by a drone. Those prices include the ability to snorkel. You'd expect to pay maybe $100 left if you just want to watch from the boat. So pretty much all the dive companies in Dili and Atauru Island will offer whale watching and swimming trips during the season. It's actually probably easier, or it's certainly a shorter distance to travel if you go from Dili, not from Atauru Island. You're probably going to save 15 to 30 minutes each way if you start from Dili rather than from Atauru, because they tend to migrate closer to the shore of the mainland rather than to the island. There are also operators in Balkau, which is about 2.5 hours east of Dili, who also offer whale watching trips. So the whales go all the way along Timor-Leste, even out in Akusi to the west. You can also see whales from the shore, but the most popular, just given where the infrastructure is for snorkeling and diving, is around Dili and Atauru. So that's given you hopefully a bit of an idea of some of the things you can do under the water in Timor-Leste. As I say, is one of the best places certainly that I've been, and I have spoken to people who have been to many places around the world, and they really rate Timor-Leste as a top destination for diving, snorkeling and swimming with whales. Thank you so much for listening to Exploring Timor-Leste. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a rating or a review. It really helps more people discover the show. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me an email at exploringtimorleste@gmail.com. Until next time, obrigado ho adeus.